Welcome, listeners, to episode 130 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. David C. Noe. I'm here in the vomitorium with Jeff T. Winkle. Jeff, we got to get right to it, don't we?
We do. Yep. So tonight we are talking about Aeschylus. This is our first foray into tragedy on the podcast.
Other than the Augustus.
That's right. Exactly. But that only going to half count.
Yeah, tragic comedy.
And so we're going to open with a distinguished translator.
Yes.
One, Deborah Roberts, whose translation of the Prometheus Bound we'll be using for these episodes. And she is reading from a selection of her own translation.
Mm-hmm. And let's just cue it up for the listeners. It's when Prometheus is speaking to whom?
The daughters of ocean, which make up the chorus in this play.
Roll the clip.
Don't think it's delicacy or stubbornness that keeps me quiet. My knowledge eats my heart as I see myself mistreated in this way. And yet who else but me distributed in full their privileges to these new gods? No need to speak of that. You know the story. But listen to the miseries of mortals, childish until I made them intelligent and capable of thought. I tell you this not to cast any blame on human beings, but to show the kind intent in what I gave. At first, they saw, but seeing was no use. They heard, but didn't hear. Like shapes in dreams, they passed long lives in purposeless confusion. They knew no homes of sun-warmed brick or wood, but lived like swarming ants in lightless caves beneath the ground. They had no way of telling when winter would arrive, or flowery spring, or summer with its fruits. In everything they acted without thought, till I explained the risings and the settings of the stars, so hard to read. And I did more for them. I invented number, cleverest of devices, and writing, hard at work to help recall all things to memory, the muse's mother. I was the first to yoke wild animals as slaves of pack and collar, so they might take on the weightiest of mortals' burdens. I harnessed horses to the chariot, delight of the extravagantly rich. No one else but me invented sailing ships that roam the sea with linen wings outspread. I found all these contrivances for mortals, but to my sorrow, I have no device by which to escape my present misery.
I have no device by which to escape my present misery.
Yes, heavy lines.
Nice.
Yeah. And from a character who not only is suffering greatly, but has seen it all coming and sees what is to come as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now the listeners, they want to hear that fabulous intro music.
Let's give it to them.
Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
All right, Jeff, so here we are. Are we going to dispense with the obligatory, how you feeling? Is it smarchy? I'm not smarchy. Did you exercise? And all that stuff.
Let's get past it.
Okay.
I was going to actually complain about the weather today.
Were you?
Yes.
Why?
I'm ready for some cool fall weather, and it was too hot for me. I was
Smocktober?
Yes. I was grumbling to my wife and kids about it today, and said, but I shouldn't. I mean, when it's sunny out, what do
you get to grumble about?
Nothing.
Okay.
Right? So let's just let's not talk about it.
Yeah. So tonight we have a shout out.
We do.
Yes, and this goes to one Victoria Swift. Now, this young woman contacted me a couple weeks ago and said that she liked the episode on loading the cannons, classical rhetoric, and wanted to investigate the subject further. Mm-hmm. So I provided her with some materials, and then she gave us this fabulous shout out. Jeff, can you read some of this for us, please?
Yes. So Victoria is at the University of Wisconsin. And she writes that after doing 12 years in the Army, I finally decided to follow my passions and pursue a degree in classics. I chose the major after some hesitation because people would always ask me if it would be useful in the real world. Wow, I never got those questions. Boy,
what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A classics degree, and would you like some fries with that?
Yeah, exactly. Heard them all. I actually started my college career, she continues, in a sociology program, thinking it would be more useful, but I switched a few years in.
Go, Victoria.
Yes, excellent. Well done. Before starting college, I was teaching myself Latin and ancient Greek and reading any classical philosophy book I could find. I figured I could just keep it a passion project while I did college, but I found myself in my Latin books instead of doing homework for my program too often. You want to pick it up there?
Yes, isn't this great?
This is awesome. I love it.
Victoria says, I realized then how much I loved it because I never grew tired of studying anything classical, and I always wanted more. Now that I've studied classics, I can't think of any degree that would be more useful to me, and I'm happy I made the switch. Over time, the field has only proven its versatility. I'm currently working on a research project for the Writing Center about how classical rhetoric can make us better tutors and aid modern writing instruction. Passions are put in us for a reason, and it is never too late to embrace them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Spoken like a philosopher, huh?
Definitely.
I like that.
Well, I love that. 12 years in the Army.
Yes.
And comes out of that to pursue a degree in classics. That's fantastic. And I also have to add, her name, Victoria Swift.
Yes.
It sounds like the alter ego of a superhero.
You know, I had the exact same thought.
What a great name.
Yeah, it is incredible. Victoria Swift.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I would hire her for some classics position if I had the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely.
Yep. So thank you so much for listening, Victoria. We hope that you're getting some value for your time, and congratulations on some wonderful career choices.
Yeah, indeed. We really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So, Dave, do we have a correction to make from
we
last
do,
week?
a corrigendum.
Okay, what
pains
happened?
me.
What happened?
It pains me to be sloppy, you know, slop. Last week, we were talking about the character Agenor.
Yeah.
And I think that I said when we were discussing Cadmus that Agenor was Cadmus's brother. Wrong.
That's not right.
Wrong. Mishka, can you put in some kind of a sad sound here, a sound effect? Right. Third strike on Family Feud.
Right.
Yeah. So here's the official Wikipedia entry, which I should have been wise enough to read beforehand. But no. Agenor was born in Memphis of Egypt to Poseidon in Libya, and he had a twin brother named Belus. The latter remained in Egypt and reigned over there, while Agenor departed to Phoenicia and reigned there. So, as it turns out, Agenor's children were Europa, Cadmus, Cilix, Phoenix, Phineus, Thasus, Syros, Cepheus, Donner, Dancer, Vixen,
Blitzen,
Prancer. Agenor's wife was variously given as Telephassa, Argiope, Antiope, and Tyro.
All right.
With the latter giving her name to the city of Tyre.
All right. So, Agenor,
I was close.
You're very close.
I said it was his brother. It was his dad.
It was his dad, right.
Yeah. So sorry about that, audience. Pay careful attention. Listen carefully. We make slips.
Right. Well, you know, we could have easily let that slide, but your conscience was bothering you.
It was.
Right? You don't like to let those things just slide. So I admire that you.
I appreciate that, Jeff.
Correction. Yes.
I have to weigh your temporary admiration against thousands of errors. I'll take it.
Right.
We have an opening quote.
Yes.
A couple of them, actually.
All right.
Shall I start with the first one?
Yes. And the first one is from Hugh Lloyd Jones.
Yes.
I have a Hugh Lloyd Jones story.
You have a Hugh Lloyd Jones anecdote?
I do, right?
Wow.
It's very, very brief. But, so a British scholar.
Let's do that first.
Right, a giant in the field, right?
Yes, he's incredible.
Incredible. But my one encounter with Mr. Lloyd Jones.
You met him in person?
I passed him at one of the big, what was it? The APA conference?
Yes, the American Philological Association.
They call it's the SCS now. Mm-hmm. But he was walking by, and it was like almost out of central casting in that he was disheveled, and he didn't really look like he knew where he was going. But my favorite detail is that his name tag on his lanyard was upside down.
That's funny.
Isn't that great? Yeah. But this is not to besmirch his academic prowess.
Oh no, the guy was brilliant.
He was, yeah.
And I really enjoyed this book. If you want to have a hardcore, serious look at some of the theological, philosophical issues behind Greco-Roman myth and tragedy, this was a fine read. So it's from the book called The Justice of Zeus. Mm-hmm. I like those kinds of titles, which are highly descriptive and brief.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't believe there is even a subtitle to this, a semicolon. I don't think
That's
so.
it, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Justice of Zeus. So he says, quote, this is page 164, the early Greeks were capable of their unique achievements largely because they could bear, as their religion shows, very much more reality than most human beings. What do you think of that, Jeff?
Well, I mean, what I see in that, to relate it to the play we're going to start discussing, is one of the things I find remarkable is the willingness of the Greeks to push back against their gods and to question. So in this play, questioning Zeus, the daughters of Ocean come up very early and are complaining about Zeus.
Right.
And if you were to compare that to other ancient cultures, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, imagining a text where they are kind of complaining about Marduk and besmirching his character. I can't imagine it. And so here, that willingness to kind of to deal with what he writes, very much more reality than most human beings, is recognizing that this is our God of justice, but so much around us seems so unjust. How do we square that circle?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think the Book of Job is an approximation or not really?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Right. I wouldn't. I wouldn't lump that in with the Assyrians and the Babylonians. But the Book of Job is very much kind of shaking your fist.
At least for the first 37 chapters or so.
Right.
Then things change.
Right.
But what I've thought about this quote a lot since I first encountered it approximately a decade ago when I read this book. They could bear very much more reality than most human beings, as their religion shows. I think this was really striking for the reasons that you said, but I would just like to restate some of them.
Yeah.
They had this capacity to hold in their minds two apparently highly contradictory ideas or impulses. And they were bothered by it, but they weren't lazy. They didn't opt out in some ways and say, oh, well, that's just the way it is. They kept continually exploring the misery of human life and the supposed goodness of the gods that they worshipped.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's a remarkable aspect of Greek society.
Yeah.
And it's there's nothing similar among the Romans. They're just so practical.
Right. I raised that question in a number of classes that I teach, is that, why were the Greeks able to do, why would this small, rocky, mountainous country,
right?
Why were
tiny in population?
Why were they able to do things that the other cultures around them, contemporaneous, before them, after them, simply could not? And I think this is one answer to that question. Yes.
And why in that specific 50-year period of the 5th century, the end of the Greco-Persian War, so 479 until the plague, 430, 429, that 50-year period, the Pentakontatia, the flowering of Western culture, it's remarkable.
It is.
One answer people give, not to get too far afield here, is that it's all propaganda, right? In other words, it really wasn't that great. We've just been told it's great for so long. Okay, you can kind of think that until you see the Parthenon.
Exactly.
Or until you see the disc thrower by Myron, or the spear bearer by Polyclitus, or something like that, and then you're just struck. This is incredibly beautiful,
right? And even when you walk through Athens today, you were just there a few weeks ago. The percentage of remains that are there that date from that period is extraordinary, right? And I think the other pushback against that idea of it being propaganda is, well, look at the results. Look at kind of the ripple effect, from then till now.
Well, the amount of imitation.
Of course, right? Yes. Yeah. But even in terms of drama, historiography, philosophy, it all stems from that period. Now, maybe there were some kind of maybe more rosy pictures being painted of it afterwards, but you can't argue with the results.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in preparation for this episode, I was reading Dr. Roberts' introduction to the play.
Yeah.
Very nicely done, by the way. And she includes a portion of the Nachleben of Prometheus. And it's very artfully written, very nicely written, and just mentions a few of the ways in which the Prometheus story has been told and retold endlessly. So it's a good example of what you were just saying.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the results.
Right.
So, Jeff, can you give us a little bit of a summary of the person of Aeschylus? We've got a little quote here from one H.J. Rose.
Yes. Do you want me to read this? Or
yes.
Okay.
I mean, at your pleasure, how much you want.
So this is from H.J. Rose's A Handbook of Greek Literature, a book that I had on my grad school shelf.
Yes. 1934. It's in the public domain now.
Yes. Rose writes, Aeschylus, or more properly, Aeschylus, son of Ephorion, of good family resident in Eleusis, was born in or about the year 525 BC. In accordance with the usual ancient habit, though by no means confined to antiquity, of decorating the lives of poets with miracles, it is said that Dionysus in person appeared to him while still a boy and bade him write tragedies. It is said that he was a Pythagorean, which is probably due to the later tendency to connect Pythagoras somehow with every philosopher or theologian.
Did we cover an episode on Pythagoras?
Did we?
You're not remembering. No meat for us, thanks, for Pythagoreans.
Yes, we did talk about the Pythagoreans.
All right. We're trying to plug an episode. Stay with me here.
I'm sorry. That he was an initiate of the Eleusinian mysteries has been repeatedly asserted, and whether we believe it or not depends on our interpretation of an ambiguous remark of Aristotle. The known facts of his career are that he fought very bravely at Marathon, and 10 years later at the chief battles of Athens and her allies against Xerxes, which is extraordinary.
Yes, and you know that the only thing that is on his tombstone, we covered this as well in the story of unusual deaths.
Yeah.
Here lies Aeschylus, who defeated the long-haired Persians at Marathon.
Nothing about his tragic career.
Yeah.
Right. That he exhibited tragedies for the first time in the 70th Olympiad, roughly 499 to 496 BC.
Before Marathon, by the way.
Yes. And won his first prize in 484, thereafter being for some time the most popular poet in Athens. You want to pick it up there? Yeah.
He accepted an invitation from Hieron to go to Syracuse, of course, in Sicily. Sometime between 472 and 468 that he returned to Athens and left the city again after 458. Let's see, in 458 he would have been 67 years old, never to return. That he died near Gela in Sicily in 456 or 455. Remember how he died?
The turtle hit him in the head.
Yes, an eagle dropped a turtle on his bald head, and that killed him.
That's right, yeah.
No, that's probably just new comedy jokes.
Right, probably not true, but it's a great story.
I would be happy to go that way. You hear kind of a whistling sound, and all of a sudden,
exactly,
turtle.
Yeah, exactly. A good death is one you don't see coming.
That's correct.
Right.
We also know that he won first prize 13 times in all. Why he died in a sort of voluntary exile is not known. Turtle. Certainly it was not for want of appreciation in Athens, for his last victory was shortly before his departure. But political events may have had something to do with it, since his plays show no love for extreme democracy and considerable admiration for the older Athenian constitutional forms. Or it may have been some private reason of which we know nothing. Turtle. More important than the events of his life are his plays. Of these, he wrote about 90.
That's incredible.
And how many survived,
Just
Jeff?
7.
Isn't that incredible?
That's a similar sad stat with Sophocles. I think it's like 120 plays, 7 survived.
Unbelievable.
Euripides a little bit better, I think 18 or 19. But it's just a small sliver of the massive output of these guys.
So what's your favorite sitcom?
My favorite sitcom of all time?
Yeah.
Seinfeld.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you boil it down to 7 episodes?
Man, no way.
No,
you couldn't do that.
because it's all an interconnected whole,
Right. So, are you saying that is it kind of pointless to even kind of interpret these tragedies because we have so little of them?
No, I'm saying that we have to recognize our interpretation is inherently very limited.
Yes. Agreed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Dave. Before we get to the play, I think it would be useful to our audience to maybe talk a little bit about just tragedy as an Athenian cultural thing,
Right.
and maybe a bit about the 3 great tragedians whose works survive intact: Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Mm-hmm. And so, I think we should do an episode or 2 on the origins of tragedy.
Yes, dithyramb and so on and so forth.
Exactly right. So, but so tragedy is one of the many great gifts that the ancient Greeks, the Athenians, bequeathed to us in the world.
Seems to have begun in the middle of the 6th century.
Right.
Around 530, 520, something like that.
Right, and associated with one Thespis.
That's correct.
And so the story, which maybe as best we can say, kind of maybe quasi-historical,
Right.
Is that he was leading one of these dithyrambic choruses in honor of the god Dionysus, who is the god of drama.
And we should specify or stipulate what a dithyramb is, right?
Right. So a dithyramb is a particular genre of sacred sung poetry.
Okay.
That in its original form, we think it was like a choral ode, and the innovation that's associated with Thespis is that at one particular performance, the traditionally is 534 BC.
Okay.
He steps out of the chorus, and then it becomes a call and response.
So he basically says, "I'm done with the Supremes.
Yeah.
I'm Diana Ross. I'm going on my own."
He went totally Diana Ross on him.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
That's the birth of drama.
It is.
Or Michael said, "I've had enough of the other 4 Jacksons.
Actually, I'm out of here.
I'm out of here."
Exactly. Who could argue with the success, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So
now you have the possibility of dialogue.
And so Thespis then becomes the first actor, and so he's singing an individual part, and he's going back and forth between a choral ode and an individual song. So voila, you have drama. And it's Aeschylus, not that long after. He's born in 525, so it's a generation after that ish.
How about "Ooh Mama, you have drama"? instead of voila. That doesn't really work.
Ooh, mama,
You've got drama.
You got drama? All
Yeah.
right. Okay, I like it.
All right.
We'll run with it.
I wasn't really listening. Sorry.
I was saying that Aeschylus is born in 525, right? So it's not that long after this event, whatever it was.
Right.
And he is usually credited with adding a second actor to the form.
Was he spinning 45s that he picked up from Thespis and the choristers?
In the DJ booth?
I mean, is that he's kind of listening? Hey, I can do this.
Totally.
Right.
Exactly right. It's like all those musicians who saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan and
Right.
say, hey, look at these.
I can play a guitar poorly.
Come on.
I got a bad haircut.
Exactly. Come on.
Right.
Look at me. And then it's and Sophocles in the generation after that is
You got Phrynicus in there too.
Is that a favorite of yours?
No, but you got him in there.
So Phrynicus is in there somewhere.
Put him in there.
But Sophocles is credited. He adds the third actor, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where the form stops.
Well, until Euripides wrecked it all.
Until he explodes everything.
That's correct.
But by and large, the history of tragedy, it's a very conservative art form. It seems
Mm-hmm.
that audiences kind of expect it to kind of unfold in a particular way, look and sound a particular way, and until Euripides comes and kind of turns it on its head.
And they were fine, booing and hollering and throwing things.
Yeah.
If the tragedy went in a direction they didn't like.
Exactly
They didn't
right.
expect.
Right, which some have suggested that explains why Euripides comparatively won so fewer first prizes.
Right.
Yeah.
So the traditional breakdown is that Aeschylus is the traditionalist. Mm-hmm. Right. He is the devout monotheist. There's one telling.
Yeah.
Who sees mystery in the ways of the gods and tries to plumb the philosophical and theological depths.
Right.
And then what's the traditional understanding, perhaps a caricature of Sophocles?
Sophocles is the existentialist.
Okay.
The vast majority of his plays that survive, maybe all of them, are post-plague. And so some have thought that pulls the rug out from Athenian self-confidence. And so he's really
It's a little too neat of an interpretation.
all of these are.
Okay.
All of these are. But so you have, in Aeschylus, you'll have plays where the gods are right there.
Right.
You have Apollo and Athena coming down on the Acropolis or on the Areopagus.
in the third play of the Oresteia trilogy.
Yes, exactly. And in Sophocles, the gods speak secondhand. They're removed. So someone suggested that
They're texting.
they're if you like the beginning of Oedipus the King,
Yes.
which was staged in 429, the year after the plague. It begins with a problem in Thebes, and what's the problem in Thebes? It's a plague.
Yeah.
And so they're wondering, where are the gods? And the gods have to speak through prophets and through oracles. They don't come out like maybe Aeschylus would have Athena come down.
So much of this is shaped by Aristotle, and I don't
Right.
remember which scholar it was who said it may have been Peter Green. I don't remember. Aristotle is the best biologist to ever write about literature.
That's great. Yeah.
But he said of Oedipus Rex, the best poem, the best play by the best tragedian.
Right.
And that's kind of stuck.
It has, right? It's if you meet someone who has never read any Greek tragedy, but they know a little bit about it,
Right.
they probably know at the title Oedipus Rex.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, you're reading about sleeping with your mom and killing your dad.
Exactly.
Well, yes, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Right. That's not the whole story.
Correct.
Right.
And then Euripides.
Yeah, Thomas tagged as the atheist.
Okay.
But more in a sense that he's the one who kind of, what was it we were just talking about, kind of throws a hand grenade into the whole thing, which explodes. I think that term often comes with a play like the Bacchae.
So is there we've been talking a little bit about 50s and 60s music.
Yeah.
Is there an analog here to Euripides? Who throws a bomb into the whole thing?
Well,
Grenade.
I guess I would need to go back to the Beatles, and the Beatles and the Stones kind of do that.
Okay.
They kind of it's after them that you stop hearing doo-wop.
Yes.
Right. And,
You don't like doo-wop?
I'm fine with doo-wop, but
To do run.
right. Oh, Sean Cassidy. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, well-
much before that.
Well, I know that, but that's the
All right.
the more famous one. Yeah.
And
So-
Euripides, right? We kind of are jaded as well in our understanding of him, or our expectations have been shaded by Aristophanes.
Yes.
To go back to Brekekekex Coax,
Right.
so much of what we think of these guys influenced by Aristophanes, fantastic parody in The Frogs.
Exactly. Almost the full last quarter of that play is the throwdown between Euripides and Aeschylus, right? And,
Lekouthia Napolisen, He lost his little bottle of oil.
Right. Exactly. And I think that, a bit unfairly it shapes our view of these
Right.
personalities because they're exaggerated comic persona, but there's a kernel of truth
That's
buried
correct.
in there somewhere, right?
Yep.
Right.
So context, you might say, is crucial
Right.
for understanding the original import of the play.
Right.
So let me ask you this. What is Aeschylus trying to say to the Athenian people? Or what is he saying to the Athenian people that they're trying to understand?
Yeah, this is a really tricky question because one of the mysteries about this play is when it was written, right?
As well as did he really write it?
Did he really write it?
We're not going to get into that.
No, we're not. But I mean, at least to say there is a thread of scholarship that suggests that maybe the play dates from the last part of the 5th century, in which case he couldn't have written it.
Right. A theory that his son wrote it.
Yeah. Right. So I guess at the end of the day, we don't really know. But Aeschylean authorship was ascribed in antiquity.
Yes.
And that stays fairly consistent, really up to the present day.
Yeah.
But
Professor Roberts, again, handles this question very nicely in her introduction.
why don't you share that with us, Dave?
Sure. So this is from page 20. She says, what features of the play have raised doubts? As I noted above, some find the play's treatment of Zeus inconsistent with that of Aeschylus's other plays. The poetry, although it has a good deal of the grandeur of Aeschylus, is linguistically less complex. The choruses in particular are simpler and less densely metaphorical than in most of his other dramas. Vocabulary, syntax, and meter are in several respects uncharacteristic of what we find in other Aeschylean plays, and various elements in the play seem to point to a later date than is compatible with what we know of the playwright's life and career. This is what you were saying.
Yeah.
The staging seems unusually elaborate and demanding. Maybe CGI had just been invented? I don't know.
Like that, right.
But then this is the part I like. It is impossible, given our current state of knowledge, to be certain about the play's authorship. The fact that we have only a fairly small percentage of Aeschylus's work means that we have to be cautious about generalizations. And the fact that the play was clearly viewed as Aeschylean in antiquity should continue to give us pause. Something you referenced also. One suggestion that might account both for the play's oddities and for its ancient reputation as Aeschylus's work is that Aeschylus's son, Euphorion, produced a Prometheus trilogy as the work of his father, perhaps completing an unfinished text.
Ah, okay.
But in the absence of certainty, she says, I continue to speak of Aeschylus as the author, not only because this seems to have been unquestioned in antiquity, but also because for all the differences scholars have noted, the play seems Aeschylean in its grandeur and scope and in its central thematic preoccupations.
Okay.
That's a very judicious and reasonable conclusion.
Yes.
I like that.
Let's. I'm all for following Professor Roberts' lead in this sense. Yeah. So, a couple of things that I would just like to talk about as setup. And so, apparently, the chronological range given for this play is written sometime between 479 and 424.
Okay,
and,
that's broad.
That's very broad.
55 years.
But if it's if you take that earliest date, 479, it's the same year as the Battle of Thermopylae, right in the middle of the second wave of Persian Wars.
Right.
And one of the views of the ancient theater that I really like is when I teach this to my classes, I try to emphasize is I think for an ancient Athenian audience, they wouldn't have seen a massive difference between what happened in the theater and what was happening on the Pnyx.
Right.
And so kind of the debates in the theater for democracy.
Can you explain the Pnyx a little bit
So
for the Peniple?
Yeah, the Pnyx is a hill that's kind of in the area of the Acropolis and the Agora. It's all kind of right near the downtown.
It's a little bit to the southwest, I believe, of the Agora.
So if you're standing on the Pnyx, you can see the Areopagus, and then beyond that, the Acropolis.
And Pnyx is a Greek word that means something like
crowded, right? Or thick,
shoved together.
And that's where the Athenian democracy would meet, and they would debate and they would vote. And so I like to tell my students is that I think that in the ancient Greek mind of the 5th century, kind of the theater of democracy in the Pnyx, where you're debating about issues that had to do with the state.
Life and death, war and peace.
Right. Is not all that different than what's happening in the theater of Dionysus just a few hundred yards away.
That's an excellent point.
They're still doing the same kind of thing. And so I think to fully understand any Greek tragedy, you don't need this element.
No.
But if you can pinpoint a date, you can say, okay, what was going on? And, when Aeschylus is painting Zeus as this tyrant
right.
in this play, Is he making Zeus a stand-in for
Pericles?
Could it be Pericles? Could it be the Persians?
Could it be Themistocles?
Could it be that? I think that when H.J. Rose says that Aeschylus shows no love for extreme democracy. Yeah, I'd buy that. But I think he's also very sympathetic to the idea that this democratic experiment is also something that is blessed by the gods.
Right.
I think like that we were talking about. We briefly mentioned the third play in the Oresteia, the idea that Athena comes down and kind of works with Athenian institutions to come to a resolution. Seems to suggest to me that, okay, Aeschylus is saying, okay, the gods are on the side of this thing, right? Maybe Pericles represents kind of an extreme view that Aeschylus wouldn't have a lot of love for,
right?
But if this play is indeed from the earlier part of the 5th century BC, there's a number of candidates for who Zeus is the stand-in for.
That's well said.
Yeah.
So was this likely part of a trilogy?
Yes, that's the widely accepted view that this is the first play, which was followed by Prometheus Leomenos, Prometheus Unbound,
right,
and then wrapped up with Prometheus Pyrphoros, the Prometheus the Fire Bearer.
Was there a fourth play like Prometheus on the Lam? Prometheus at the post office?
Prometheus donates a lung.
That's right.
Oh man, Prometheus goes to camp.
Yeah. It's pretty much endless.
It is endless.
Are there any fragments of these plays?
I think there are. There's a few.
Okay.
So I don't. They're not. This isn't just pure fantasy.
No.
These plays did exist.
Well, Prometheus goes to camp. That's pure fantasy.
It is.
Starring that Michigan native, right?
Who's that?
Ernest?
Was he from Michigan?
I don't know.
Jim Varney was.
There you go.
Yeah.
He used to do the ice cream commercials.
Right. And he was the know what I mean Vern guy, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
That got old quickly.
Right. But I mean, if Prometheus was a moderately successful Netflix series, they would keep. They would make Prometheus Goes to Camp.
Right.
Of course they would.
Prometheus Goes to College. Right.
Right.
It's pretty much endless.
Yep.
So the source, mythologically, for Aeschylus is Hesiod.
That
the
seems
primary source, or maybe the only source.
Right. And so, so Hesiod deals with Prometheus in both his Works and Days and the Theogony, but it's very skeletal, right? We don't get a lot of details surrounding Prometheus's motivations, right? We learn that he steals fire and he gets human beings. Aeschylus is very interested in why he may have done these things.
Slightly different genealogy given in Hesiod than for Aeschylus.
Yeah, so Hesiod mentions that Prometheus is the son of Iapetus.
Right.
No mother is given. And at least 2 times early in the play, Aeschylus emphasizes that he's a child of Themis.
That's correct.
Which I think is significant.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So did we cover Hesiod in previous episodes? Here's a plug.
Yes, we did. Theogony and the Ecstasy, right?
Working for a Living.
That's right.
Which was on Works and Days, and then Theogony and the Ecstasy.
Right. So our listeners are going to want to go check those out if you haven't listened to those already.
Enough.
All right.
Okay. How many years have transpired though between the Hesiodic source material and the Aeschylean reworking?
At least a couple of hundred, and so he's far distant from Hesiod, but that's plenty of time for playwrights like Hesiod and Homer to be fully kind of embedded as almost sacred literature for the Greeks.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What other kinds of additions or alterations did Aeschylus make?
So. He is the physical punishment of Prometheus. The chaining, the impaling, the sending of the bird to peck at his liver or his heart. All that is much more elaborate in Aeschylus. The detail that Heracles is fated to be born later, and one of his deeds will become to kill the eagle and be instrumental in freeing Prometheus. And then the particular kind of cruelty and injustice of Zeus is almost seems to be purely Aeschylean.
And that seems to be the shocking part, right? And this is where interpreters say, Aeschylus doesn't have this view of Zeus in his other plays.
Yes,
right. But now he's the big baddie, right? He's the tyrant extraordinaire, and so they think something's off.
Right. So which makes me even more think, okay, if we knew when this play was written, we could explain that much better.
Well, and if we had the other 83 plus plays, we'd have a much clearer idea.
Right. Can you imagine what an output? So how did he live to be about 70?
Yeah.
And so
1 a year.
1 a year.
Starting in infancy.
Is that right? I mean, the just how prolific.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But when you have a formula, right?
Yeah.
And then you have just an overpowering imagination.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
So he could just kind of, he had a beat on the drum box that he could play, and then he's just auto-tuning everything. It's just kind of just...
I don't know.
Right?
There's genius there.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
not just pure output.
Right, exactly.
You want to talk about the Hackett cover?
I
before
love
we go
talking
to the
about the
ads?
Hackett covers. You know this.
Yes,
right?
I know. This one is especially interesting.
It is. So, regular listeners will know that when we talk about Hackett in our ads, I will often wax eloquent about how I love the covers. They're very clever, and they will often use a contemporary picture.
For example,
So the picture of the landing at D-Day for the Iliad,
the moon landing.
the moon landing for the Odyssey, the picture of Elvis Presley being inducted into the army for the Bacchae, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
This one is I'm not exactly sure what's going on.
Okay.
Maybe you have some ideas.
Careful, don't bite the hand that sponsors you.
No, of course not. But the picture on the front of the Hackett edition of Prometheus Bound is this contemporary sculpture that sits in the middle of the Vatican
Courtyard.
Museum courtyard.
Yes.
Right.
By Arnaldo Tomato.
Yes, exactly. It is Arnie Tomato is his name. Yes.
His name is Pomodoro.
Which is Italian for tomato.
Yeah, Arnaldo Pomodoro.
Right.
The first time I saw it, I thought, is that the Death Star?
It does look like the Death Star.
A lot,
Right?
doesn't it?
Yeah. Or the AT&T symbol.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Right, yeah.
Before the breakup.
Right. But
it's a sphere.
It's a massive kind of shiny sphere, but it's fragmented, so you can kind of see the interior, kind of the guts of it.
Right.
So
it's got cracks and in some kind of interior symmetry, but exterior disaster.
Right. And so what it made me think of, okay, so how am I going to use this to explain the play?
Right.
That it's kind of questioning the lordship and justice of Zeus. It's almost like saying the whole world is threatening to fall apart.
I see.
And of course, Prometheus also, his ace in the hole is that he knows the name of the woman that if Zeus sleeps with her,
Right.
will produce a son greater than the father.
Yes, which turns out to be, it's a Thetis, right? And
Yes.
it turns out to be, she marries Peleus and it's Achilles.
Achilles, right.
But Zeus doesn't know that,
Right.
so he's terrified.
So that kind of that threat of the whole thing coming crashing down, maybe that's what's suggested by this sculpture. I don't know.
Well, another point you could make for Arnie Tomato,
Yeah.
Arnaldo Pomodoro, sorry, is that the surface is highly reflective, right?
Yes.
So when you approach the work of art, the object, you see yourself in its cracked exterior and its roughed up shape.
Yes.
And maybe that's supposed to cause some kind of inner reflection on your own disproportion. Have you ever had that experience?
I'm sure I have. I couldn't get.
Okay.
But
Have you seen the Bean in Chicago?
I have seen Bean. Right.
People go, and it's kind of a similar object.
It is.
Similarly disturbing object, I would say.
Right. It kind of gives you a kind of weird funhouse mirror
Yes.
kind of view of yourself.
But it's massive.
It is massive. But I have to say, that's kind of a shockingly unknowy-like interpretation of this.
Well, you're misunderstanding. It's not that I think that is the right interpretation.
But even that you would offer it it seems
You-
like
you,
you would
you underestimate me.
I do. I often do, but I've known you many years.
Yes.
But I would think that
All of them pleasant.
You would be the first to kind of poo-poo the notion of that, you engage the work, you become part of the work of
didn't
art.
say that.
That's exactly what you said.
No.
Right?
I'm poo-pooing. Don't you worry. I will poo-poo.
Yeah.
But
I like the interpretation.
being able to imagine any number of erroneous and ridiculous interpretations
Yes.
doesn't mean I'm committed to any of them.
No, but you seemed very serious when you were offering that.
Okay,
And
I was a little serious.
all I'm saying is one, I think it's a very good interpretation, and two, it just seems very unlike you. That's all I'm saying.
Speaking of things unlike me,
Yes?
it's time for the ads.
Do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good folks at Ratio Coffee, and especially that Mark Hellwig, that guy.
You like that guy?
I do like that guy. I've never met him.
No.
I hope to meet him someday.
Well, we're going to go out there someday.
Are we going to go out
Yeah,
there?
we're going to tour the facilities. We're going to record an episode, something like that.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So we're talking about out in Portland, right?
That's correct.
Fantastic.
That's
Well-
where the entrepreneur lives.
Right. And so this genius behind Ratio Coffee Company, they make these wonderful They're high-end coffee machines that just produce consistently remarkable coffee day after day.
I got to tell you, if Prometheus had a ratio 8 or a ratio 6 while he's chained to the rock, it would have changed everything.
It would have. He'd be, I'm good.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's right.
No, just a minute, when Hephaestus shows up and Kratos and Bia, no, just a minute, I'm blooming.
Right, exactly right. Yeah. And I think out of respect, they would hold back.
Oh, I think so. Right. That's a beautiful machine. Now, the one flaw in my theory here is that as the eagle picks out his liver, right? I mean, it might be it's going to be a little macabre here. Might be a little bit hard to keep the coffee in.
That's true. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But aside from that,
It'd work.
That's a bold theory. So these machines, the ratio 8, that's the machine that both you and I have, and its younger brother, the 6.
Which you also used extensively before you graduated.
I love it. I still have it. I can't let go of it.
You can't loan it to some poor fellow who's, just using an inferior squirty plastic Dack and Blecker kind of thing?
I should do that. I mean, it's ridiculous that I would hang on to it as some sort of backup machine.
If you were humane and philanthropic.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But they're both great machines. They're wonderful. I had a perfect cup of coffee this morning. I imagine you did too.
I did. Yep. Several. It was phenomenal.
Right.
But and the magic, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I wanted to say that so there's the 8, the 6. There's something coming down the line.
Yeah, right? The ratio 4.
Ratio 4 is not out yet.
No, it's going to come in hopefully early 2024. It is going to revolutionize the coffee industry. I have no doubt about this.
Yes.
I think I would say this even if, Mark wasn't sponsoring this podcast.
Right.
Because it's going to bring high quality, high-end coffee, kind of like similar to the pod system.
Yeah.
But much better quality and not as disposable.
Right.
And beautiful works of art.
Right. Yeah. I can't wait for it. I think that our listeners will jump on this as well.
Yeah. And it's more attainable. I mean, let's be honest. The 8 is not a cheap machine, but why you would want to every day use a cheap coffee machine, that's beyond me.
That's right. So listeners, if you want to take advantage of our offer, go to ratiocoffee.com. Pick one of these machines, the 8, the 6. Maybe you want to hang in there, wait for the 4 down the line. This month, October, you can use this code ANCOF7 is our code, and that will get you 15% off your entire order.
Do you want to know what the F stands for?
What is it?
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci, of course.
Fibonacci, the shower head.
Of course, I should have known that.
Of course.
Check it out.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you by the good folks at Hackett Publishing. These are the publishers of Prometheus Bound, the translation by Deborah Roberts.
Yep.
Also, we have the Lombardo translations of the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, Ovid's Metamorphoses. Jeff, is there anything not to like about Hackett?
There really isn't. And if you look at their catalog, if the listener goes to hackettpublishing.com, you can see their extensive catalog. Yes, lots of offerings from the classical world, but you can find texts on Islam, philosophy,
samurais,
yes, Eastern history, Eastern philosophy and religion. They've got it all. And we were just talking about how we love the artwork. This volume of Prometheus Bound is very affordable.
It is.
It's an excellent translation.
Yep.
By someone who knows exactly what she's doing. I can't say enough about it.
And as I was reading through the introduction of the book, she takes into account other translations, other scholarship. I was just very impressed with the humaneness, the responsibility. Not an off word, I would say, in anything of what she's put together.
Right.
So far as I can tell.
And it struck me as well as that both the translation and the introduction, you don't have to be a classical scholar to get this, right?
It hits the sweet spot.
It does hit the sweet spot. It's not going to buries you in footnotes and arcane things. It really is a wonderful, pithy, right to the point kind of introduction.
And Professor Roberts has another translation of Aeschylus coming out in 2024.
Oh, and which one is she doing?
This is The Persians.
Oh, yes.
And we'll probably have to cover that at some point.
Yep.
But this was the play that Aeschylus wrote that is set in the court of the Persian aristocracy.
Right.
Kind of their perspective on the Athenian victory.
Yes, exactly. And it's the one tragedy that survives that is not borrowed from the mythical canon.
Yes, incredible. So look forward to that. So, Jeff, let's say the listener's convinced now. All right, you guys, you've been singing the praises of Hackett. I want to expand my classical library. What should I do?
They should go to hackettpublishing.com. That's HACKETT publishing.com. Find the books you want, drop them into the little grocery basket, and type in the code AN2023.
And Jeff, what will that get them?
They'll get them two wonderful things, 20% off your entire order and free shipping.
Check it out. Okay, Jeff, as we get back into it now, we are ready to start, aren't we, with the opening lines of the play itself?
We are, and it's we've gotten. I think we've gone too long in this episode without actually hearing some Greek.
Yes.
So, Dave, would you read some?
Ooh, mama, here's your drama.
Let's do it. Let's read those opening lines.
All right, so I'm going to read this. This is an iambic trimeter, and honestly, reading this kind of meter I find more challenging than reading hexameter. There are no doubt other persons out there who can do it better. I must say that, but here goes.
All right.
Kthenos menes telu ron heikomen pedon. Sku thenes hoi mon abaton es ere mion. He feist soy de chre melen epistolas. Hasoi pater efe teton de pros petrais. Hupse loc me nois ton le orgon ok masai. Adaman tinon desmon and ardrek tois pedais.
Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Yes, impressive.
Thank you. It's a beautiful, musical, rhythmic language.
It is.
One thing that occurred to me as I was preparing for this episode is, you know how much I dislike musicals.
Yes, I'm with you there.
Are you really?
Yes, exactly. You got something to say it.
You know, Gary Schmidt?
Yes.
One of our best episodes, right? I don't remember what we called it, but Gary doesn't like musicals either.
Really?
He does not.
Did you learn this from the man himself, or did you?
I learned this from his daughter, one of his students. No, he doesn't like musicals. Either sing it or say it. Why do they have to be run together?
Right.
But it occurred to me, tragedy is like a musical.
It is like a musical. Yeah.
So why do I like it so much?
Well,
am I just a horrible hypocrite?
No, I think the corollary. Maybe this won't help, but the corollary I've heard that this explained is that it's actually more like opera than it is like music. This isn't like Guys and Dolls.
Okay.
This is more like.
So what's the difference?
Pagliacci.
The girth of the singers?
Well, I think that it's tragedy. It's about. It's about the song, right? So you can have. It's not about the action on the stage, right?
So tragedy is about the song. You're saying
it's about the song more than it is about the physical action that you're seeing on the stage.
Okay.
Yes. And so
tragedy is about the ideas.
Yes. Right.
Whereas a musical.
Well, it tends. Well, it would depend upon the musical, but I think it tends to be. More about the emotion, perhaps you might say. It's maybe it can be
floundering,
lighter.
You're floundering.
I'm trying to come up with something.
All right,
but do you got an opinion on this about the opera comparison versus a musical?
I don't know opera well enough. I'm suspicious that the idea is highbrow versus lowbrow, and that doesn't seem to be like an adequate explanation.
No.
That seems overly simplistic.
I do. Well, let's see where this takes us.
Maybe one of the listeners is an expert in these kinds of things and can provide us some guidance. Yeah. In the meantime, why don't you read the translation by Professor Roberts of the Greek lines I just read?
Sure. Just a brief setup. And so when the play opens, we're on the distant crag, and we have 4 characters on stage. We have abstractions, power, and force. Kratos and Bia. Bia is one of Aeschylus' famous silent characters, never speaks. They're with Hephaestus, the god of the forge, the smith god. And then you also have Prometheus there who's being led to his punishment.
And Prometheus does not speak for quite a long time.
No, he is silent as they chain him to the rock. And power, Kratos opens this up. And so he says, "We have come to a distant region of the earth, the Scythian wilderness where no mortals live. Hephaestus, you are here to carry out the commands of Father Zeus. Against these rocks, high cliffs of fall harness this criminal with chains of adamant, bonds he cannot break. It was the flower of your own craft he stole, bright fire, the origin of every art stole and handed to mortals. For this wrong, he must pay the penalty the gods exact, so that he may learn to embrace the authority of Zeus and leave his human, loving way."
Nice.
All right. You want to read Hephaestus' lines?
I would. I would just like to make one little comment on the speech of power.
Yes.
And that is, I like the way that Greek tragedy frames the plot for you so efficiently and suggestively. It's all here. There's no surprise.
Right. Exactly.
But it's so beautifully done.
It is beautifully done. And I like that it opens with a dialogue. So many Greek tragedies open with one character kind of giving a monologue, kind of setting up the whole play, which is fine and it works. But
like the Agamemnon,
or
the night watchman is lying dogwise on the roof.
Exactly. Or the Alcestis too. Apollo comes down and sets the whole scene in a monologue. But this is a back and forth between power and Hephaestus. Yep.
So I'll read Hephaestus.
Yep.
Power and force, you've carried out completely what Zeus decreed. Your part in this is done, but I can't bear to bind a god by force, one of my family, in this wintry chasm. And all the same, I am required to bear it. It's hard to set aside my father's words. He turns to speak to Prometheus. Child of Themis, who gives sound advice, your thoughts aim high. Against your will and mine, I'll pin you with bronze chains you can't undo on this crag far away from humankind, where you will neither see the forms of mortals nor hear their voices. Burnt by the sun's bright fire, your skin will lose its bloom. You will be glad when night in spangled clothing hides the daylight, and again when sun at dawn dispels the frost. Always the burden of each moment's pain will wear you down. Your rescuer is not yet born. This is what your human-loving ways have won. You are a god, and still you did not cower before the anger of the gods, but granted mortals honors to which they have no right. For that you'll keep watch on this joyless rock, upright, unsleeping, never bending a knee. You'll cry out often, in sorrow, pain, regret, it will do no good. Zeus is not to be won over. He is harsh, as all those new to power are harsh.
So Hephaestus, this is really fascinating. So Hephaestus is a son of Zeus,
An Olympian.
But he seems to take no joy in carrying out this order of his father, right? And so he's waffling a bit, right? He sees the injustice in this. I mean, and on the one hand, he says that you gave mortals what they don't deserve. You did wrong, and that comes with consequences. But he says, I can't bear to do this. He's one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's an innately cruel thing to do.
Yeah.
And so we have Hephaestus, who was the god who was the most mocked and picked on by the rest of them. He is the bumbling fool in the Odyssey. I think it's the end of Book 1, where he's serving the gods at table, and they make horrible fun of his lameness.
Right.
They're cruel beyond measure.
Yes. Yep. So maybe he sees an underdog. He knows an underdog when he sees one,
right?
So maybe there's some sympathy there.
Could be.
It also, speaking of like the Athenian context, of course, Hephaestus is a god who plays a role, a very important role in the pantheon for the Athenians.
Right.
You have the temple right off the agora,
the Hephaestion.
He has a particular connection to Athena. He is a god of civilization, and so he's a god that's very close to kind of the ethos of the inventive, creative Athenian. So, I mean, could Aeschylus be trying to say something by presenting Hephaestus in this way to a original audience of Athenians?
Absolutely. And as Professor Roberts, once again, for the win, mentions in her introduction, there was a joint altar to Prometheus and Hephaestus in the Athenian precinct.
Oh, well, there you go.
So they worshipped them together in some sense. So there's the union, the joining.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that last line of Hephaestus, he is harsh, as all those new to power are harsh. And so I think we should contextualize.
There's the potential political angle.
Well, I think contextualize it in terms of like in the myth, when is this story happening? So this is soon after the victory of the Olympians over the Titans, right? And so maybe it would lend Zeus some sympathy to think, okay, he's got to nail things down quick if he wants to maintain power. And so maybe he is overreaching, but for the purpose of making sure that his rule is going to last where his predecessors did not. I don't know if that's not an excuse, but maybe it explains.
Oh, it's explanatory.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first job?
I do.
Yes. What was that like?
It was horrible. I was on my hands and knees weeding a massive garden in a huge nursery with a little trowel.
Were there any what's the word I'm looking for? Cream cones? That
was my second job.
What were those again?
The cream curls.
Cream curls.
Yes.
Okay, let me rephrase this. Right. Do you remember your first academic job?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
So when I got, not my first, but I guess it would be my third academic job when I came to this part of the country and worked at Calvin College at the time, I asked an individual who had been my mentor and friend, any advice on, teaching this particular group of students? And he gave me some good advice that I won't repeat, but one thing he said was, you don't have to always be as challenging and rigorous as possible in order to maintain authority. Words to that effect.
Oh, okay. I
don't know if he said that because he knew me or what was going on, but it's reminiscent of what we read here, right? With Zeus, where Hephaestus says, Zeus is not to be won over. He is harsh, as all those new to power are harsh.
Yeah.
So there's a tendency to go into the classroom and you've got to demonstrate I'm in charge. And if there's any kind of insecurity bundled into that, you have to make a point of it sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So getting past that, I think, is a great step in maturing as a teacher.
Sure.
I don't think Zeus wants to teach Latin, but it strikes me as analogous.
Yeah. I received similar advice along the lines of like, be harsh early, because you can always kind of back off from there. But if you
That's
start
the counterpoint.
if you start soft,
You've lost them.
You've lost them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to balance those things.
Yep.
Zeus apparently is not balancing.
He's not balancing yet.
Right.
Maybe it's early on.
Okay, so where does it go from here?
Well, I love this detail that Power throws in, is that he says, when he's talking to Hephaestus, he says, listen, this guy stole your gig, right? He stole fire. That's your thing,
Right.
working at the forge. And it's almost as if Power is saying, Power recognized that Hephaestus he's wavering.
Right.
He said, but listen, this guy insulted you as much as anybody. He stole fire. And so he's kind of taking that out of your own hands. And Power doesn't seem to really understand why Hephaestus wouldn't be angry about
Right.
that. I just think that's really an interesting twist. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a kind of an Aeschylean shift going on here in terms of Prometheus's motivation when we compare it to Hesiod?
Oh, that persona of or that question over the motive of Prometheus, I think, is really quite interesting, right? And so there are readers and authors who much later than Aeschylus will make a lot of hay over it. Prometheus is the rare. He's a kind of savior figure for the Greeks. He's kind of a rare deity that looks out for humanity's sake. Mm-hmm. And I guess to some degree that's true. But my sense of the Prometheus story is, why does he steal fire and give it to mortals? It's not really because he loves mortals.
Right.
It's because he wants to get back at Zeus.
It's a revenge move.
It's a revenge move. But the way that Aeschylus frames it is that, just in these two dialogues, it's, you're going to pay for your human loving ways.
Right.
He becomes a very different kind of character.
This is one of the first plays that I read as an undergrad. It was in Mark Williams' class, classical
right?
mythology.
Oh,
Read
yeah.
Prometheus Bound. I think it was the Lattimore translation.
I think, I remember that too.
Yeah, you remember the cover probably
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first papers that I wrote was comparing Prometheus. Is Prometheus a legitimate Christ figure?
Yeah.
And I don't remember what I concluded, but I think I focused on the dissimilarities. I hope the paper doesn't survive anywhere because it was pretty poor. But, nothing is discovered and perfected at the same time, as Cicero says. So
Right. I think broadly speaking, it's an interesting comparison to
Yes.
make. Just because a god acting in that way in the Greek pantheon is so rare.
Yes, and he is in effect crucified.
Yes.
Prometheus is in effect crucified.
Right. And then there's even this moment early on where there's where Power is kind of mocking Prometheus and kind of has a kind of physician heal thyself moment, which well, I think also kind of draws out the parallel.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So Power says to Prometheus, he says, "Here now, display your arrogance and steal God's privileges for creatures of a day. How can mortals lessen this suffering? The gods call you Prometheus, forethinker, false name. You lack the forethought you require to twist your way out of this work of art."
Yes.
So if you are who you say you are, how could you get stuck like this?
That's right.
Yeah.
Interesting side note, the name Prometheus has always been taken as etymologically derived from forethought,
Yes.
right? And his brother Epimetheus,
Afterthought. Right.
How's that for a name? But as I was doing a little bit of research, apparently there's some suggestion it might have a Sanskrit root that has to do with fire, actually.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah, so maybe somewhere down the road, if we want to dig a little deeper into who is the author of this play, we can deal with some of these extraneous issues.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, I had never heard that before. That's really quite interesting.
So now the daughters of Ocean.
Yes.
They pop up.
So
These are the Oceanids, right?
right. And so once Kratos, Bia, and Hephaestus leave the stage, the daughters of Ocean, which are the chorus in this play, show up. And they are ready to do what choruses do: weep and wail and wring their hands and cast a doubt on everything.
And they're not to be taken, as I understand, from Oliver Taplin, Stagecraft of Aeschylus, and others. The chorus is not to be taken as representing the everyman perspective.
It's not.
Not.
Okay. All right.
Not. We shouldn't fall into that easy fallacy that, okay, now you're going to get what the audience thinks as voiced by the chorus. It's more sophisticated than that.
Okay. All right.
But what do they say?
So they say to Prometheus, "What god is so hard-hearted that he finds delight in this? Who wouldn't share your sorrow, except for Zeus? In constant anger and with unbending mind, he subjugates heaven's children. He will not stop until he satiates his heart, for someone wins his kingdom, hard to win, by violence or by art. I mean, I find those words extraordinary in that it's a critique of Zeus.
Yes.
And usually the characters within a chorus are characters who are on the margins that don't possess a lot of power here.
No.
And so these are divinities, but they're low on the food chain.
Definitely.
And they are willing to to give their sympathies to someone who is the arch enemy of the guy who's now in charge.
That's right. Prometheus has spoken prior to this, right? And we didn't quote that part, but he gives a kind of a stoic, that'd be anachronistic, but
yes,
a kind of a stoic, well, I'm just here to endure, so that's what I'll do.
Yes, exactly. Right. And if his name doesn't mean forethinker, of course, he can see how this is all going to end as well.
Which he does.
Right. But those kinds of characters kind of drive me crazy, the ones that, know the future. It kind of gets you into kind of that time travel paradox. Is what does Prometheus have free will in this?
I see.
So is it?
You find those things vexing?
Well, is it really suffering if he can already see? If he already knows it's going to end, or it's at least a different kind of suffering?
Right.
He knows it's not going to be eternal. I don't know.
It's the kind of suffering you get when watching Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I don't know if those are questions you're not one of those questions you're not supposed to ask.
I don't know.
But yeah.
Well, Jeff, I think we're up against it.
Are we really?
Yeah. Does this seem like a good place to break it off?
Yeah, I think we can stop here.
Okay.
We've just scratched the surface in terms of the play itself. I look forward to the next one.
We have one more episode, perhaps even two. I guess we'll see where it takes us.
We'll see where it takes us.
But before we get out of here, right? It was the National Liver Society is holding a meeting here, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I don't know why they're meeting this late.
I don't know.
Right. But
they have to give up the vomitorium, ironically.
Yeah,
so.
They are a cranky, demanding bunch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, before we go, tell us a little bit about the Moss Method, LLPSI, what you got going on.
Sure. So the Moss Method for Greek is a way to take you from...
neophyte to erudite.
That's right. Thank you, Jeff. It's a program I have developed using the textbook of Charles Melville Moss. It's not really a textbook. It's a Greek reader. And as he says in the introduction, Greek should not be about the thumbs constantly flipping through the lexicon.
Yes.
It should be about the brain. You should try to figure out what the words mean in context. Use a little imagination. Use some memory.
Yeah.
And so the book is brilliantly put together. I've divided up its 163 readings into 4 modules. Each module is 40 lessons. And I have taken each reading and given a whiteboard video presentation of all the forms, all the content. The great thing is you're learning the grammar, but you're not just memorizing paradigms.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit of that, but you're learning how to actually read Greek, and the stories are fascinating.
Fantastic.
So you sign up for this, go to mossmethod.com, check out some of my free offerings. We're almost up to 2,000 videos on my YouTube channel.
Wow.
1,995 as we speak. Watch the free offerings, Church Fathers, the Scriptures. We've got some Plato, no Aeschylus, got some Sophocles. Maybe I should put some Aeschylus up there. If you like what you see, you want to study Greek with me, sign up for the course. Can you tell them about the Moffus Hours?
That's my favorite part.
That you love?
I believe you host these Friday, right?
That's correct.
And this is where they zoom in. And,
That's right.
And you can meet people from all over the world.
Yes, this last little tutorial session that we had, folks from Switzerland, folks from North Carolina, folks from New York, India, several individuals from India, and California.
That's fantastic.
And we're all reading Greek together.
That's great. So they have direct access to you.
That's right.
It's not just the videos.
No
but
flunky.
It's the real deal. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now what about if people want to learn some Latin?
Right. So latinperdiem.com/LLPSI, Hans Orberg's Lingua Latina per se illustrata. I've got Unit 1 done, the first 9 chapters. So I'm teaching 4 students, live students. I mean, they were live at the time, but you get the point.
Right.
And you can learn along with the book, watch their mistakes, watch their successes. We have a good time. I explain to you how to read Latin, how to speak Latin, how to write Latin. And as with the Greek course, there may be better courses out there, but I am really convinced there isn't a better value. That is the combination of my expertise and experience, the thoroughness of the product I put out at the price point. I think it's unbeatable.
And so where would they go to find this?
latinperdiem.com/LLPSI.
Fantastic.
Jeff, we got some people to thank.
We do. As always, Mishka, our great engineer who record turnaround times for getting these things out, and it always sounds fantastic. And how about these guys, Scott and Ken?
Yes.
So the great music that you hear throughout. That's
right.
Screaming guitar.
I love that stuff.
That's fantastic. So
we're very appreciative to them for their generosity in sharing their music with us.
Yes. So Dave, if people want a shout out, if they got an idea, they got a question, they got something to add, what should they do?
Well, they should contact you, Jeff, at adnauseum.com. Don't forget that there is a V in ad nauseum.
Yep.
Or they can contact me,
Dave at adnauseum.com. Also, don't forget that V there.
You can pick up an ad nauseum themed t-shirt.
Yes.
These are nice black and orange t-shirts with Hercules fighting the Nemean lion or holding up the world. And there's this nice Erasmian tag.
Yes, quae nocent docent.
That's right.
As that which harms teaches.
That's right. What doesn't kill you
makes you stronger.
All right.
And I should add, great fall colors.
Yes.
This would be the perfect time of year to get one of those shirts.
Maybe take them on your hayride.
There we go. Right. And so, Dave, next week it's part 2 of PB.
That's right.
Yep.
And you're going to cue me up for this here, but don't give too much away because I got a joke involved.
Okay, great.
A poor one, but
Dave, you have the gustatory parting shot. Yes?
Yeah. So this is from the famous English philosopher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, John Michael Osborne.
Oh, I haven't heard of this guy.
You don't know John Michael Osborne?
No. It's
from his biography, I Am Ozzy.
Oh, that John Michael. Ozzy.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
I liked this. This stuck out to me. So Ozzy Osbourne says, killing a pig for a good old fry-up is one thing, but there's no excuse for being cruel, even if you're a bored teenage kid.
Oh,
there's some wisdom there, huh?
Wisdom. Nice, Ozzy. Right. I love the term fry-up, too.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.